Is restricting the export of a wide range of products to Israel until a ceasefire is declared in Gaza. The restrictions come after Israel rejected a Turkish request to airdrop aid into Gaza. Now, this marks Ankara's first significant measure against Israel after 6 months of war. Turkey's continuing commercial ties with Israel have prompted a domestic backlash and protests over the weekend. Starting today, Turkey will restrict the exports of more than 50 categories of products. That includes iron, steel, cement, construction equipment and aviation fuel. But the opposition wants the government to go further by totally suspending trade and blocking planes and ships from reaching Israel. Over at The Hague, Israel's ally Germany is having to defend its actions at the International Court of Justice. Berlin denies it's aiding genocide in Gaza by selling arms to Israel. The case was filed by Nicaragua in support of the Palestinians. Germany says Israel's security is a priority for Berlin because of the Nazi extermination of Jews in the Holocaust. It says its arms exports are scrutinized to ensure they abide by international law.
And if we look at what has actually been licensed for export to Israel under this framework since October 2023, we see no artillery shells, no munitions. Nearly all exports involve what is known as other military equipment, typically of a subordinate or defensive nature.
Alex Kadir joins us live from Tel Aviv with more. Alex, initial Israeli reaction to Turkey's export restrictions, and what's the potential impact on Israel?
Well, a very strong charge in response to that decision by Turkey, by Israel. Katz, Israel's foreign minister, he said that President Erdogan is willing to sacrifice the Turkish economy in order to support Hamas. So a very strong pushback from the Israeli government just in the last few hours, also vowing to respond in kind. Now, we don't know exactly what measures the Israeli government has decided to put in place or will put in place in response to this export ban. You mentioned some of the items involved include steel, cement, aluminium, fertilizer, airplane fuel, as well as iron, which is the top export coming out of Turkey into Israel. Now, it's also clear that this seems to be a political decision on the part of the Turkish president. That is how it's being perceived here in Israel, as this being more about Turkish domestic politics and that pressure that you mentioned on President Erdogan to do more in response to Israel's war in Gaza. And clearly, that is the sentiment here in Israel. We also get a sense that Turkey is not in the top 10 trading partners for Israel. So clearly that is the sense. It's a political decision, but is also part of a broader conversation about international pressure on Israel. But for now, the Israeli government pushing back very firmly.
Well, what more do we know about the date the Israeli Prime Minister says has been set for a ground offensive in Rafah?
Well, we don't have a specific date yet, but we do know is that the White House, Washington, D.C., has said that they have not yet been briefed on exactly when that will be. And we understand from previous conversations, a virtual call between Israeli officials and the U.S. National Security Advisor, in which the U.S. officials said the evacuation of civilians from Rafah could take up to 4 months. In that same meeting, the Israeli officials saying, no, it'll be more like 4 weeks. And so that is the kind of time frame that you can imagine. Israeli military officials I was speaking to just yesterday said it'll be closer to the 4-month mark suggested by the United States. That would also offer a potential window for a pause in fighting. As we know, those ceasefire talks ongoing in Cairo. The delegations will be back there tomorrow to try and hash out a deal. Clearly, the opposition, the international opposition against this operation in Rafah, from Jordan, from France, from the United States, very clearly there saying that an operation in Rafah without the evacuation of civilians would be catastrophic. But it's also important to remember that Prime Minister Netanyahu is internationally under pressure not to go into Rafah. There's also a lot of domestic political pressure in Israel to continue with the operation in Rafah. The National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir saying in the last 24 hours that if an operation in Rafah doesn't happen, Prime Minister Netanyahu will have lost his mandate to govern. So the Prime Minister under international pressure not to go in, under domestic political pressure to go into Rafah. No date yet set, but the Israeli government saying they are absolutely going into Rafah in the next few weeks.
Alex Gadia in Tel Aviv. Thanks so much.